I've been doing this work for about 20 years, wanting to make my mark, leave something that people would remember, and I've got this thing that I'm calling the Simmons Triangle. I've been intrigued by the relationship between values, practice, and planning. All sorts of people talk about person-centered planning and how fabulous it is and how it really changes lives. But unless the planning is supported by really solid values, a real understanding of the issues around inclusion, and practice that matches those values, practice that on a day-to-day basis lives out the things that people say, then the planning itself can be meaningless and empty. So what I've got here is a bit of an illustration to help me understand the relationship between the three things. I've called it the Simmons Triangle in a very modest kind of way. Maslow's got his hierarchy of needs. Here am I with my triangle. You'll see that the broad base of the triangle is about the values. The values are crucial. What do we believe about the people that we're working with? What do we believe about people who are different from us? Right? And because what we believe comes out in our hands, it affects our practice, it affects how we design services, it affects how we think about people, how we talk about them. So the values are fundamental. But values without good practice is just really a lot of thinking and stroking your chin and pondering. You need to make the values visible by the things that you do. Okay? So, person-centered practice, working well in a person-centered way should reflect the things that you believe about people. You'll be helping people make choices. Yeah, so when you think about the practice, your practice will be absolutely in line with your values. It will be congruent. And then somewhere on the top of the triangle, it's a tiny little bit, is a notion of person-centered planning, which is a specific intervention that you would use when someone's in a process of change or turmoil, whatever, when something needs to happen for a person. People can have good lives without ever having a person-centered plan done, so long as the people who are around them have good values and those values are translated into practice. Planning done without good values and practice is empty and can be meaningless, can just simply reconfigure the old stuff or build even new difficulties into a person's life. So, the Simmons Triangle: values, practice, and planning. Yeah, I'm going to choose the same symbol and make something a bit different of it. I've been really intrigued by the relationship that there is between values, practice, and planning. What I would describe as person-centered thinking, working, and then planning. And I think that the values are the absolute foundation for any work that we do in this field. Without the values, then we're lost. Anything goes, we can do anything, and some really crazy things have happened in the name of inclusion or indeed in the name of person-centered planning. So I think that people need a solid grounding in the values in order to help them understand what good looks like in any situation. So we need values, but it's not enough just to have values and just to be a ponderer and a thinker about stuff. The whole idea is to work differently so that things change for people. So our values need to be reflected in our practice, in the way that we do our work. So this is person-centered working. So what we believe should come out in our hands, it should come out of our mouth, it should be in our attitudes. So I think if workers have good values, and those values are reflected in practice, then folks could have good lives. Yeah, that's what makes a difference. Practice needs to be demonstrated in the day-to-day working with people. If an organisation, if a worker has good values and good practice, then people will have good lives. Okay? You might never need to do a person-centred plan. Okay? But we're in a situation, in order to help us get some sort of thought of person-centred planning in its right place, I think we need to see it as almost like the icing on the cake, something that you would do at a particular time when someone needed a particular intervention or wanted to make a change in their life. Without good values and good practice, any plans that are made are useless. If you can't get two socks the same colour on someone's feet, then forget it. You can talk all the stuff you want about maps and paths. It sounds empty and hollow. Yeah. So there's a balance between values, practice, and I think you'll see from the triangle that the values and the practice form the bulk of the triangle, and then right at the top of it, there's this little thing called person-centered planning. Okay. But remember, without the values and the good practice, the planning is meaningless.